I might not need a microphone here because I just left class at like 6 o'clock and it's like I'm right in my classroom again, just a different audience. So thanks for that great introduction, Lily. And I'll put the microphone on, and if I'm too loud, just tell me and I'll... That's it. I think that's too loud. What do you guys think? Is that okay? Or you want it? You need a mic?
Good, Lily.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, is that okay with this, guys? Yeah. Okay. I'm used to being in a lecture hall. Thanks very much. Yeah, that's perfect. Just need it. Okay, that's okay.
Does anybody know how to get rid of the stop bar? Look the view of the screen.
Yeah, beautiful space.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's why we have a team here. Thanks very much. Okay. I'm going to try to build on the opening presentation and try to really help everyone here embrace an innovation mindset, I think, in concert with thinking to how to gain that competitive edge in the marketplace. And sort of the real key message today, let me make sure I get this right. Well, here we go. Okay. So today's sort of core message is to sort of shape the right strategic angle to ensure you have the right competitive advantage to play in the innovation game. And I'm going to use some frameworks and models of which have worked for me not only during my consulting and teaching phase right now in my life and current journey, in my career, but also when I had the fortunate opportunity to deal with the Walmarts of the world at Campbell Soup Company, Cadbury Adams, and as well when I was a copywriter in advertising. So I've really got a perspective, I think, that crosses a number of different business roles within companies, as well as inventing new products. So trying to make sure that I have a competitive edge to help sell a brand position to not only a vendor like a Walmart, but to a mass consumer base to buy into a brand experience. The key takeaways, guys, is to think about innovation as a mindset, not a set mind, okay? Strategy is meant to be shaped, not developed, okay? Yes, I'm going to use some language here that is putting a bit of a creative spin on building a strategy, but really want you to think in ways that it's all about coming up with a big idea that has a sustainable competitive advantage to execute. That sounds very subjective and artsy when it comes to strategy, but the reality is strategy is a lot of art as much as it is science. There's a bit of a blend between right brain and left brain thinking that goes into a really cohesive strategy to deliver on. In fact, to build on the first presentation, I like to make up words, but the word coherence, and I spell that C-O and then H-E-A-R-E-N-C-E. Coherence about listening to your consumer, your customer, your employee stakeholders, and all of the key inputs and insights that come throughout the organization or brand experience to build strategy is the most impactful way. You talk about the Starbucks, the Toyotas, the Apples, the Procter & Gamble's, and the menu of brands they have. The reason they've been successful, and like it was alluded to in the first presentation, that would take a whole day of discussion. But the reality is they've built powerful brands that aren't about logos and great TV ads and sexy sponsorships with sports teams, etc. But they've been about enduring ideas that can stay the test of time. You think about Toyota last year. Toyota actually had a bad year from a quality perception perspective with their consumer. But when that was happening and the callbacks were happening, I thought, I'm born in Oshawa and I drive a Mini. I don't drive a GM car at the moment. But I thought, really, GM's going to pounce on this in some way and benefit a lot. And the reality was, Toyota really didn't lose its face with its customer because they built an enduring brand that had a trust element with the consumer. So once you win in that arena, you're set. As long as you don't become complacent and you close your eyes to what the competition's doing, which in my mind, building on the discussion we just had on GM, was one of the mistakes they made. They weren't open-minded in looking at what the competitors were doing and to where the market was going. So strategy is meant to be shaped, not developed. Always ask yourself, what's the right competitive edge for my strategy? You may devise a competitive edge in year 1 that may have to evolve a bit as you get to year 3, year 4, and year 5, depending on the shape of the market, especially today with innovation being such a continuous activity that is happening. Not just new products, but new ways employees are employed, new ways that communication come to market. The web is having a significant influence on branding in general in a lot of ways. But the reality is even the Facebooks of the world are going to have to not operate in a monopolistic attitude to win. They're going to have to keep an eye on what the competition or perceived competition is doing, like the Google Pluses, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Ideas need to be strategized in fun ways. And I've got some acronyms there to play around with, but I really try to intertwine strategic thinking with playing in a lot of ways. And that's probably because of my innovation and design background. And then in-market execution needs to be strategic harmony, not just creativity. So when you execute your strategy that's got a competitive point of difference, and this sounds very simple and common sense-ish, but the reality is it's funny how the biggest corporations in the world don't get it right. The reality is everything has to work in an integrated fashion. Right message, right audience, right time, right customer, right store, right merchandising, especially today with such a busy marketplace of messaging and innovation, you've got to win in all facets. And I'm not suggesting that you, I'm working with a great client right now in the software world, and like Google, his primary communication medium is going to be online. But there's notes you can take from the Google book and cross-apply to your brand that is not going to require you to spend $1 bazillion on developing an ad campaign to run during the Super Bowl. You don't have to do that. But you do today have to be clever. Good question. Okay? Presentation content flow. So talking about creating a cross-functional strategy DNA team. Okay, it's a big term, but I'm a big believer in, I know a lot of HR divisions within companies or recruiters when you're out looking for jobs in the marketplace, if you are at some point, if you're not starting your own business, say title doesn't mean anything. My feeling is it does, and if you give the right title in context and text to an employee, if you tell them a strategist, they'll believe they can think like a strategist. If you tell them a coordinator, they'll think like a coordinator. Okay? So I'm a big believer in finessing titles of employees to help create a cohesive strategic product delivery. Shaping competitive strategy, and I take the word edgy and put in there, because you got to have an edge. You've got to have an edge that is enduring and ongoing, and you got to find the right angle to do that edge. And I'm using a bit of geometry.
May we have your attention, please?
To
an alarm has
deliver
been
a message.
initiated on the...
Unless a fire drill goes off, and I'll have to be really quick. But the reality is you have to find the right angle and edge for your brand to play in the innovation game. And
Attention.
that sounds
May I have
really
your attention,
straightforward,
please?
but
This is building
once I get
management.
into the presentation, you'll see more and
Fire has
more
been activated on Northwest
that
Motor.
angle can evolve.
You're investigating the
I'll do
alarm.
my best here as I go.
Further information will be provided.
Is your business idea able to gain the competitive edge? So what you have to figure out is, once you figure out what business idea you have as a startup,
By
or a new
and
company,
listen for further
or your
instructions.
business, you have to figure out appeal to a population of 30 million people. It also has to deliver a sales threshold of $25 million. So yes, there's some other corporate dimensions in there. But if you break everything down, and I don't know if you've ever heard the lemonade stand analogy, but it's summertime. I tell my students, I just told them the story today. I'm like, it's summertime, guys. People are thirsty. You build a lemonade stand at the end of your driveway. You hand out flyers. You make the lemonade. You sell it for 25 cents. Maybe it costs you like $3 to buy a can, and then make it in a concentrated way. You make money. That's marketing. And that's business, actually. And that's coherent strategy delivery. So the more that you don't, to your point, overcomplicate what strategy really is and see it for the vision it can realize, the more impactful your initiative will be. Really, really crystallize. Use the lemonade stand analogy with everything. I use it all the time. Even when I talk about pro sports marketing, which is one of the other topics that I cover off in my lecture portfolio. The reality is, the Raptors are selling a great experience for basketball fans, families, different target markets who come to the game to experience a great night out. They're not going to win a lot of games maybe this year, but they've strategically set up their season in such a way that you're going to have a good time, you're going to hopefully buy another ticket at a lower cost, and you're going to believe in the future of the vision of where they're going. So even professional sports marketers sell visions and strategies to us as consumers. This isn't just limited to cars, technology, physical goods, etc. It's brand is king, and the selling of a strategy of a brand crosses every industry we play in today. And then pressing play to execute innovation harmony. So once you have the right angle, and I'll use the analogy of a play button on a radio, or on a cassette recorder, you can play in the innovation game. So that differentiated, sustainable concept that you've created, okay, both from a product delivery and how you package it, will enable you to win. Your consumer perception is your reality. I'm not trying to take credit for that quote, but it was something I said to my students today. Whatever your customer sees you as, you have to evolve your strategy in accordance to deliver on it. You can lead them to where you want to go, but your positioning only works to a certain stage where they're buying into where you're going. Like the Starbucks example. I mean, that created a franchise, that created a third place to get a coffee in a franchise context, okay? And they built a value proposition that was powerful enough that you would pay $5 for a coffee versus having Maxwell House or another grocery-based brand at home. The reality is, to get there, a number of things had to go right coherently with the 4 pieces of the marketing mix. Their product was great, but everything else had to blend together. And when they did that, they created a proposition that will endure. Okay? Creating a cross-functional strategy DNA team. So what I'm basically getting at here, guys, is I'm sure a lot of you, either in a corporate context or now as you start up companies, you've got a cross-functional team you're working with. You've got a marketing expert, you've probably got a product design expert, you've got an engineer, you've got a packaging person maybe. Maybe you're working with a third-party supplier on promotion, etc. Try to, think about, okay, how do I put competitive strategy into context with my employees and partners? Do I give them a title instead of you being my accountant, you're my financial strategist? That terminology reframes everything that individual thinks about when they think about your strategy. Okay? So another piece is,
May I have your attention,
if you
please?
strategically
This is
disrupt,
Building Manager.
yes,
The fire alarm has been activated on the northwest podium. We are investigating the alarm.
oh,
Further information will be provided. Thank you.
okay. I'll be agile. I'm good at that. I'm strategically agile too. If you disrupt conventions at the beginning, you'll have a more harmonious ending, and that's just not a piece of poetry. It really worked for me during my experience at the Cadburys of the world, the Campbells, etc. For example, when I was at Cadbury, and I was charged with conceptualizing and introducing new chocolate products, often in a bar format, I had an R&D guy who was just a genius in terms of coming up with any flavor, format, shape, box. He could do it all. And we would work really well together at coming up with new ideas that were commercializing new ideas. I actually involved him in my advertising agency cross-functional team. And here's a guy that didn't know anything about how to create a commercial or a promotion, etc. But he had a great creative mind. And I gave him the title as Chief Idea Officer for my team. And we created little cards, etc. And he carried them around. And he immediately felt like he was a marketer. And everyone, they may not admit it, but subconsciously we all want to be marketers. We all want to come up with the idea, launch it, make $1 million, go to Hawaii. We all want to do that. We may not say it all the time, but we want to do that. We all want to be idea people in some way. So, or strategists, because it sounds sexy, and there's sexy aspects to it. So, use that at the beginning when you disrupt the way that you compose your team, when you're composing a launch team to build a business. Okay, like for example, so you got, remember it's all about set mind, or mindset, not set mind. So if someone's an engineer and you say, yeah, you're the engineer, and you've never come up with an idea to make the ad campaign yet, but if you call them the brand engineer, or if you call them the supply chain strategist, if they're working on the supply chain part of a product launch, immediately they want to and will think creatively and add value, maybe in ways you couldn't have imagined before. because subconsciously you've given them a new role. Not really, but kind of. And that's worked with me, for example, with athletes in the past. When I've done, and I've worn many hats in my career, but on the sports marketing level, I used to always get any athlete I was working with directly involved with the R&Ding of a product. Did they, were they really good at coming up with new chocolate bar flavors? No. But I got them involved in actually having input onto the product design, box design, etc. because they then embraced the fact that they were a part of the product development team. Nike did it years ago. Nike invented it with Michael Jordan on shoes. And it's since has expanded into other companies around the world. But involving your stakeholders in ways that they can get involved in strategy up front and giving them the title builds cross-functional DNA that makes your strategy more powerful. Okay. Once you've built your team, it's time to shape your competitive strategy. This is a really busy chart, but hopefully you're going to get the message. So, I like to talk about the 5 C's before the 4 P's. And I firmly believe, guys, that coherent marketing direction is strategy. And I'm not trying to take away what's done on the employee, operations, manufacturing, R&D level, but to me, all of those different functions, I think that's because my background's in consumer packaged goods, they all ladder up into building a great product, or building a great retail display, or building a great supply network to get your product to Walmart before anyone else. Because Walmart mandates they get their product first. So the supply chain has to deliver on that. But to me, that's a product distribution strategy. So one of the things when I look at building coherent strategic plans for clients, or certainly in my days in corporate, and now as a lecturer at George Brown, is that understanding the different buckets of facts that I can source for the competition, the competencies that we have as a company. So what are the competencies that we have as an organization that we can build on? Okay? You look at a brand like Disney, they got a strong brand. They got they've got a multifaceted portfolio of products that are proven in the marketplace. I mean, you go through a simple SWOT after you've done a situational analysis. So your situational analysis, which feeds your SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and I'm happy to share with you some of the templates I use at the college, but is you basically understand all the different buckets that feed into you building a powerful business idea. Okay?
Attention. May I have your attention, please? This is building management. The fire alarm has been activated on the northwest podium. We are investigating the alarm.
I've never done a
Further
presentation
information will be provided. Thank you.
I'm sure most of us haven't done one.
Being flexible is important.
Yeah, I'm agile. Competencies, conventions, category. You want to disrupt conventions at all times, and hopefully you're getting that from my monologue right now. You got it. You can't win today without doing that in some way. The brands that were shown in the previous presentation all did it. Toyota created the perception they were involved in the environment before it was even on the map of most of our minds. And they held to it. They held to it. Another company could have launched an electric car before they did, and they wouldn't know. And that's a subjective comment. That's anecdotal. I don't have any, textbook or case study out of a marketing book to support that, but that's my own perception. Okay? Because of brand. Okay? But at the end of the day, your edge of difference, which is what I call the point of difference, or the EOD, has to blend well with your consumer. If you look at the case studies that were presented quickly in the last presentation, every one of those brands, yes, there would have been issues maybe operatively, or there was legal issues with Enron, but the reality is they all lost focus on who their consumer was, needs, wants, wishes, desires. They lost it. GM was closed-minded as they moved their brand forward. Now they're not. They're making great cars, they're listening to consumers, they prune their line, they know where they can win and what business they're in, and they go forward. Okay? Apple figured its way out in a little bit, I don't want to call it luck, but the reality is that they didn't recontextualize the music business into an online format, they would not maybe be alive today. So innovation behind a pretty powerful brand saved that franchise and catapulted them into a place now where they're synonymous in converging technology. You look at another case that's just emerging, God forbid another Canadian company having trouble on the technology front, is rail. And we're all seeing it, playing out in the newspapers. if you want my subjective opinion, it's because they launched a great piece of technology that was original for the PDA, didn't launch a brand with a sustainable competitive advantage. They just didn't. BlackBerry was this great piece of technology that they introduced that was then carried through by the carriers. But you had a TELUS BlackBerry or you had a Rogers BlackBerry. But you, with an iPhone, you don't have a Rogers iPhone. You have an Apple iPhone. And in consumer goods, when I was in that arena with the Campbells of the world, it got to a point where the Campbell's, the Kellogg's, the Cadbury's, the PepsiCo's, all these big corporations have big, powerful brands that have been built for like 100 years. But all of a sudden, the retailer figured out that the place part of their strategy was their edge of difference. They owned the experience that they could offer the shopper right away. And they owned once they built a strong brand, and I'm alluding to Loblaws right now with President's Choice and Trust, they could then build, yes, it's called private label or no name, but it's a brand now. It's a profitable brand. And they charge vendors, they charge vendors to put their products in that store just to have them there. And then they advertise their President's Choice brand, comparing it to the vendor that they've charged to be in the store. It's a fascinating business model, but it works. And the Gap did this, and the Gap, here's another quick case. The Gap, in its early years, used to sell Levi's jeans. They were a distribution center for Levi's jeans, so they figured out that they owned the foot traffic, they owned the experience, and they were able to build a portfolio of the product that appealed to the consumer. Okay, so that was the edge of difference that then evolved. Okay, Loblaws realized, and Walmart's got there through supply chain as well and other reasons. But once you build that brand on top of this, so like to our discussion earlier, the positioning meshes with the quality of the product, you're in a great spot. Like Apple, great spot. Can't be blinded, but great spot. RIM, hopefully, they got a new product launch on the Bold, and they're doing some good things, but it's a little catch up now, because I think they rested a bit on their laurels, which is another thing in strategy that you can't do. It's fluid, it's living, especially now. You could write a 5-year strategic plan, and you might change it in year 2 or 3 or the first 5 months. I've had to do that before. Yeah.
Attention. May I have your attention?
This is going to be a
This
great
is
spot.
building management. The fire alarm has been activated on the northwest podium. We are investigating the alarm. Further information will be provided. Thank you.
Yes.
Talking about RIM, you said that their main problem is branding.
That's a subjective view.
Right?
It's not proven.
So, what about Nokia?
I hear me? Oh, Nokia.
Nokia.
Excuse me, Nokia.
Nokia lost big time. Was it because of their branding issues, or because in that they did not have issues like Rogers Nokia or some other Nokia?
You know what? I can't comment. I'm not that familiar with the Nokia brand, quite frankly, but I think this gentleman here, Sonny's going to chime in.
I'll just speak up. With respect to if branding did play a role with RIM, but one of the key issues that damaged RIM was the RIM push technology and the protocols and all the encryption technology they had. It was created in a time when bandwidth was a very expensive and rare commodity. Okay, and so for their enterprise customers, being able to receive a message virtually in real time pushed out to you was a huge thing, because the only alternative was your phone had to make an internet connection, go talk to some server, download email, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Now what happened is, since data now is so cheap, it's basically free. Bandwidth is a non-issue. That you can achieve the same thing with just an interval poll method, right? So the iPhone doesn't get any real-time emails, right? Unless maybe somebody has a setup where they can push it out to their phone, right? But every 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, it just goes and grabs your email. And for the vast majority of users, that's more than good enough, because their desktops don't check more often than that anyways, right? And so what happened is, BlackBerry, which is focused on the enterprise market, all these other people emerged who started with the consumer market, right? But then the enterprise market started seeing, hey, that's got a nice toy, that's got all these features my product doesn't have, right? And the secret sauce, the email and the messaging and the other stuff, not BBM, but text messaging and other things, hey, that's pretty good, it works almost as well as I need, right? And now the feature set was so significant that a lot of those customers never came back, right? So they still have significant market share in the enterprise space for people who need encryption or people who need DBM or other stuff, right? But their technology didn't keep up with what was happening in I won't say marketplace, but what was happening in the technology infrastructure universe. Really with the
And quickly, just building on that, just quickly, is, so Widdis also leading to his focus. So if you're winning well in the enterprise market, maybe you shouldn't play with the consumers. Like maybe you can't, because Apple's a stronger consumer brand. I go back to brand, but there's a part of that. And also, do you understand your consumer in such a way that, is it really, really important that you get that email that much quicker? Maybe they did, I don't know, maybe they didn't do as much research. Maybe they assumed that the technology was needed by the consumer versus, and that happens a lot. I've seen it in the software world where it's like, we got all these bells and whistles, let's launch them, hold on. Do they really want them?
I think what happened is that, I think that, following on somewhat yours, Sonny, I think what happened is that BlackBerry or RIM forgot that a businessman is also a consumer.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? So the transition between the two, it wasn't an absolute barrier. There wasn't a logical barrier
It's an interesting
or
point.
an emotional barrier.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, good point. Any other thoughts, guys? Again, this is speculation. It's just on, as I watch different strategies evolve in the market, it's like you kind of die, and you probably do that too as business people, or I'd encourage it as a teacher for you to do that going forward because your business will be stronger if you can kind of dissect what you perceive is happening with other brands that are out there. Like GM, right? Out of business, first ad that comes out after they declared bankruptcy, reinvention. Out it comes, and they were probably dying to do that for 2 years. and then they could do that because they went bankrupt and were able to do that in terms of restaging their business. Okay, so just quickly one back here, just so you guys are aware. So again, understanding your competencies, your competition, getting those buckets all done, but then remembering that what your right angle is to move forward with as an edge of difference. And I'm using the triangle, as an example from a visual context, but it can really work. Okay, and a lot of people aren't able to get in here to find out what they're, like to Sonny's point in his presentation, it's very hard sometimes to get people in 7 words or less to say, this is what business I'm in and this is the value proposition I bring. A lot of people, up to the CEO level, can't articulate that. And they try to build an ad campaign around it. And they try to communicate it at retail. It's very hard. It's a hard exercise to go through. I challenge you to go through it through your business. What are the 5 words that describe my proposition as a sustainable idea? Some steps here in summary. So determine your competencies across the 4 Ps. Product, price, place, promotion. Today is the day to do it, but I can take you through that in that model derived by Kotler 50 years ago still works today. It can work across any business to build a coherent strategy across the sub-strategies of all the 4 Ps. Always anchored in positioning. Book written in 1975, Reese and Trout. If you read it, I've read it about 4 times, I live it, I teach it in my class. If you understand that book, you can win in the business startup game. If you really understand what positioning is all about and the mind of real estate that you want to occupy. Understand your category and competition. Sounds simple, but how many times do you do a SWOT analysis that's living and breathing of a competitor? Take a competitive stance. If you're working for, I'm just going back to my Cadbury days, but often we would actually do a SWOT for Hershey, or we would do a SWOT for a particular brand like O. Henry chocolate bar, because I would want to look through their lens to see how they perceive me as a brand, okay, competing against them directly. Define the right strategic angle. Find your edge of difference, recognizing that it's built on being better at something, being differentiated at something, not only in talking to yourself, but the perception you've created with your consumer. So you may think you got the most clever name, the best website, the best idea, but if you have not had any, and I'm not suggesting I want you to go into like major research, but what I am suggesting is that you get a second opinion and have a second thought at what is the user experience if it's software for my particular brand? And how does that stack up versus the competition? And isn't it an enduring idea? Is it sustainable? Those kind of discussions, okay? All you have to do is turn on Dragon's Den and watch people walk out there for great TV, and they haven't done their homework. They think they've got the next big idea that's going to change the world, and they have no idea what the competitors are doing, what the category is all about, what their business is going to be if they get invested in. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's rarely done properly. Strategize your new business idea in a fun way, and then press play and execute. So, strategizing ideas in fun ways. I've coined a term and trademarked it. Insight-driven epiphany anywhere. I really firmly believe that if you live, I don't want to suggest like you live an experiential life like I do right now.
Attention, may I have your attention, please? This is building management. The alarm condition has been investigated and all has been found to be in order.
Great.
I repeat, all has been found to be in order. Thank you.
Well, I've got an idea for them, but here's an insight. No, I really firmly believe that ideas can be born anywhere. Okay? And one of, like, for example, for me, when I try to come up with a business idea, I may go for a run, or I often go through like a mall, like the Eaton Center. And I will often just go around, watch people shop, talk to retailers, just act like a consumer. Wearing many different hats. So if I walk into the Apple store, I'm a techie. If I walk into the Disney store, I'm wanting to go on a trip. If I walk into the Mr. Green Jeans, I'm wanting to have a really nice lunch that's pretty robust in terms of volume. So I kind of wear different hats to try to get different ideas that I can then collaborate into new businesses for clients or within whatever problem I'm facing. And if you come up with an idea often in that environment, the insight's there. Like there's this hidden truth you come up with, and it probably can work. You just have to do some more research around it, or have some further dialogue with a business partner, consultant, friend, whoever you want that to be. Okay? But it can happen everywhere. And the example I'm just showing here is, a cat trying to get water in a shower. Maybe you come up with an idea around meow milk. I don't know if anyone's in here that works for Mars, but there's cat food out there, but no one's devised a dairy line for the cat's favorite beverage, which is milk. Okay? Now, I just come up with that, and that's just for this presentation. I'm not suggesting that I'm going to pitch that to Mars at any point soon, or the dairy for that matter. But the reality is, if you think, is my idea focused, is it conventional, and is it newsworthy? Okay? So does it have fun incorporated into it? The opportunity could be there. All you have to do, and again, a lot of my background is in consumer goods, but if you walk into a grocery store now versus like 10 years ago, and think about the milk category or the juice category, like just take a look at it. There used to be skim, 1%, 2%. Now you can have 1% that's microfiltered. What the heck's microfiltered? Well, they've created a brand idea around a filtering process that becomes a secret sauce in the proposition they sell retailers and us on. Okay? Orange juice, right? Concentrate used to come in a can, it's fine. Tang, all of a sudden there's Tropicana. It's freshly squeezed in a box. Okay? Packaging perception. These are all different examples in packaged goods of the 4 Ps coming to life in different ways. But the key theme is that they were all firsts. Just like Southwest, that was a first. A first for the airline industry for regional travel, I believe, was one of their quality pieces. And then they actually listened to you when you wanted something on the plane. And they actually sang songs, made it a fun experience, paying $300 to go to Florida. And wasn't that interesting? They actually made it fun, paying $300. How many times you get an airplane before and felt like it was, going to communist Russia? There was a time it was like that. It's all about the brand. I know I keep going brand because of my marketing background, but that's the brand architecture that they crafted with the input from the various stakeholders to build an experience. They couldn't sustain quality or regional travel, but they could sustain it if they were there first to be different, and they created a nice proposition for people from a usage experience perspective. Okay? Okay. Summary. So simplify, always read between the lines, think strategically. Okay? If you're in a research situation, like a focus group for matter, and you made a great point on how, it's groupthink, where it happens, where someone in a focus group says, I don't like the brand name, it's not going to work, and hence the product never comes to market. okay? Like the electric car. Like, who killed the electric car, the movie? You know, GM had it. They had it before anyone else did. The market just wasn't ready. And within the organization, they weren't willing to sort of take that creative leap. Isn't it interesting when they restaged their business and they relaunched, and they've done a great job how they launched some new products pretty quick because they were adjusting to the marketplace and having to, and other factors came into play, but the reality was they were doing it for survival, and they innovated, and now they're getting to a great place. Ford's a great case on that front, actually, the last 2 years. Imagination breeds creative association. So again, I'm not suggesting that Toyota built their cars based on the word toy. But interestingly enough, if you do take words, and it comes a bit easy for me because I've been a copywriter and an innovation person, but there are ways to look at and twist words differently with wordplay to come up with new ideas that then help you build that competitive point of difference. And you remember, all ideas are strategic thoughts associated in new ways. And one of the things I talked about when I was at Campbell's and I was launching a new product, is I would always, not say I copied other strategies, but what I would say is I recontextualize other strategies, which is often done. If you think about it, 20, 30 years ago, the Sony Walkman came to market. Music you could listen to with headphones. Then the iPod through iTunes comes in. What's the difference? Brand, design, and some good technology. But the usage, portable music, is pretty similar. So nothing is really, really radically new. It's just new in how it's served up, packaged, and delivered. I really firmly believe that. And I haven't written a book on it, but I might one day. It's really, really, you think about, the horse and carriage with cars. They were going to call it horseless carriages, I think, cars, before they called them cars or automobiles. It's transportation. That's what it is. Okay? So once you come up with your idea, and I'm assuming a lot of you guys will be launching new businesses or looking to launch new businesses. When you come up with your new idea, okay, one thing I highly recommend is don't rely on price or costs to be your differentiator. It's just, that can work for your mom and pop stores, or if you want to be small, but the reality is once you're online, you're global. So today, build a brand, even if you're small, do a business plan, take the step back, if you know what you don't know, and then acknowledge that and look for some advice, And I'm not sitting up here pitching my services at all, I promise you that. But one thing I can tell you, and I firmly believe it, no brand, no business. No differentiation, no business. No plan, no business because you don't want to be doing your plan in 3 years after you've executed. It just doesn't work. Yep, right, Jeff?
One thing that you didn't mention, that I would like to mention about not building your brand on, besides price and that, is technology.
Yep, and BlackBerry is kind of my example. But don't, not just technology meaning like the internet or other software devices, but like Toblerone chocolate is in a triangle box. They've been okay because, for a number of reasons, but no one's gone to a triangular pack because they kind of own that association with the consumer, and that's part of their brand identity. But you don't want to launch or introduce a new business with something that can be knocked off immediately. And I'd argue that Toblerone, actually, as I remember the ad campaign they ran at Christmas, it wasn't focused all around the triangular box and packaging. It got more into the Swiss element of where the recipe was derived, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, please jump in.
I think the triangular shape is because it brings the mind of the consumer to the mountains, to the Swiss Alps.
That could be very much the rationale. I don't know, but that's a great insight. It could be the mountains of Switzerland. Is that part of it? I don't know. I don't know the brand that well. Is that part of it? Okay, very insightful. I did not know that. That's very cool, actually.
I don't know. I'm just.
No, it is it. That's very good. Cool. Very cool. Did not know that. Don't hang your hat on one attribute, I guess is what we're saying here. Don't hang your hat on, we're a lot nicer in how we serve you as an airline. Because you know what? Someone's going to catch up to you there and change the perception eventually. So this is all about being able. So once you have an idea that you really believe in, it's got a competitive edge that you've done your homework on, you've built your triangle, and you're ready to really take that triangle and make it into a big idea. Just go through the exercise. And I used to do this with my team when we were building new products. Is the product desirable by the consumer, customer, anyone in the value chain? Okay. Is it novelable? It's got to be novel. It's got to be. To Reg's point earlier about strategy being simple, like, yes, elegant's an interesting comment though, because elegant is making its way into a lot of the language and strategy now because of the power of design. Design is really important now, really important, like in every aspect. Apple's been a key driver of that culturally for us as a consumer base, but design is really, really important. But novel ability, it's got to be novel. So you think about, again, I love my basketball analogies, but you go to a basketball game, a Raptors game. 1995, 96, when they launched the team, that was novel as heck. There was music in a game. There was dance pack. It was cheerleaders in a hybrid with, a music show. It was like a rock concert, hip hop event happening with guys in the court dribbling balls with really short shorts that evolved. That was novelable, okay? And that has sustained a bit of the brand imagery. Difference is in pro sport versus products that you make like Apple. The reality is the general manager is the developer of products. So at some point, even the New York Yankees, if they don't win, people aren't going to go. No, I mean, there's a big, we're talking about a big, powerful brand like the Leafs. I mean, that kind of brand level. But if the quality's not there, they're not going to go. But it's still got to be novelable. I worked on a brand once, guys. Honestly, blind taste test. Consumers preferred the product that I was working on way better than the competition. Like the whole Pepsi-Coke issue, where Coke readjusted its formula to match basically the taste of Pepsi because they wanted to gain market share. As soon as you put that label on, it changes the whole game. And the same happened for me with chocolate. We could not win versus the competition in certain aspects from marketing context because as soon as we put the label on our brand, we had no chance. Even though we were a better product, for sure. But the perception was already created. Is it makeable? Can you make the thing? Or can you manufacture it? Okay? Is it profitable? The GM analogy is hilarious. I know, I read that case, I'm like, what are you doing? Losing money per unit that you're going to make back on bigger brands like Cadillac because they're more profitable. You got to make money off it. Maybe not right away, but at some point in the way you built your strategy. Okay? Is it scalable? I think everyone in this room wants to scale their business in some way. And with the web available now, it's totally at your fingertips. And is it integratable, meaning that you gotta build communication around it. Even if it's just a business card, a website, and you talking in a one-to-one context with another customer, you're still representing your brand. Like I always say to my students, they're my consumers. I'm representing the brand in front of them and delivering the experience. I'm the spokesperson for that experience. And interestingly enough, 40% of some of the classes I taught have actually come to the course because they've had good word of mouth experiences through other customers. No different than being in another channel in marketing. Okay. Remember to work backwards before you go forward. So, just something I learned in packaged goods that I've always held true is think about the actual usage experience of when the consumer buys the product, and then when they actually use it, and go through the exercise as a startup in understanding what are the dynamics within that. Okay, it's very important. Think about toothbrushes, how they've been reinvented, the ergonomic shape, the bristles, how they've been patented to get more plaque off than other toothbrushes. Okay, but it's all designed, but it's all thought about through the usage experience. I mean, go into it. I really highly encourage it. Like, go to the Eaton Center with that hat on, like I was talking about. You'll be amazed. Cosmetics, well merchandised. Potato chips, not bad, by PepsiCo, but certainly when you get into the variety store channel, it can be busier. That doesn't mean you can't learn things from the variety store channel to bring them to the cosmetics brand. There's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas that happen within that forum. Okay? So understanding the moment they buy it and watching them buy it, and then how they consume it. And then it's all about pressing play to execute innovation harmony. So create a forceful brand name, and that's something I put together as a model around coming up with a brand position. Determine your anchor medium. So, for example, quickly guys, for Google, their anchor medium of promotion is the web. Their anchor distribution component is the web. Their anchor pricing component is through different services they offer. The web they're an all-encompassing product that delivers all the 4 Ps through the web. The reality is, for some of you guys, you will be offline businesses. So you have to figure out what is the best anchor medium for me to build my brand. It might not be a website. It might not. I'm not saying I'm saying 9 times out of 10 it's probably going to be, but ask yourself the question, what's the right medium? Okay? It might be through events, might be through looking at PR activities, et cetera, et cetera. Find out what your anchor medium is, and then create your 360 degrees song sheet. So make sure that whether it's your Salesforce, your business cards, your website, your fan page on Facebook, any communication you have on LinkedIn, which is a great device, which I could talk to at another session, but that becomes your storefront for how you merchandise your brand and the story. And whatever you articulate in your profile there has to marry back to your website. It has to marry to everything you do. And it sounds simple, but you have to live it, breathe it, and present it in everything you do. It's definitely now a marketplace where the personal life and the business life are blended, okay? Then press play. So always think to yourself, so song 1 or act 1 for my business could be year 1. What's that going to look like? Maybe we're not going to win a Grammy that year. That's okay, because we're going to win a Grammy in year 3 because we're going to be in a better place with our business model. Okay? So have realistic expectations for your strategy and how you deliver it. You know, year 1, you probably won't make money, or you might make money. Again, it depends on the dynamics of your enterprise. But understand that once you've created your edge of difference, you have the right to play in the innovation game. Okay, and it's a simple formula, but the reality is, again, visuals to help, we rarely go through this. Edge of difference, big idea, differentiated, press play, and then we get into the innovation. We can execute. So through business card, this is cost effective. PR events, a website, social media, business cards, advertising. Think about your business card. Maybe you put a coupon on the back. Maybe you make it into a piece of a puzzle where you have to get 5 other business cards, you put them together, you get a free service. I'm just brainstorming on my feet. How can you make your tools and competencies work to your advantage? Okay? Thank you for your time today, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I appreciate your patience during the agility I had to and there was a fire alarm. Any questions, guys? Are you all ready to press play?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I found very interesting that you mentioned about the product that is desirable. So I think that this is actually a very, very interesting point because let's say here you talked a lot about Apple and iPad and so on. I saw even in real life how people wanted the product, and sometimes it was not really about the product, but it was just because somebody else had it.
Referral.
And it's sort of like because it's cool, so to have it. And I think there's lots of products if you're right to have people thinking that it's in fashion to have it, that it's a must-have. I think that this is a great place to be for any kind of...
If I may build on it, to your point, everyone wants to be there. Some guys will say, I'm in business-to-business marketing, it doesn't apply, I don't need a brand. I really would argue today you do. I don't think there's room for saying, you know what, I'm just about selling bottled water, so I'm not about building a brand badge. The reality is, if you can get your business to a place where it's viewed as, just use your words, differentiated and better, but then in a way that you touch the subconscious in a novelable way, you win. Like, I drive a Mini, and I love it. It's a little more pricier. I love the design. I love the fact they do everything backwards in how they design their car. It's desirable for me. It's novelable for me as a consumer. I know they're doing a heck of a job marketing to me to promote it, for me to buy. I know what they're doing, but I still buy into it. Just like I'm an Apple user, I do the same thing. But the reality is, there's a subconscious factor that you want to win on. If you win on emotion, you win in the game, regardless. And differentiation, better than product, and some great positioning packaged together can help you win. Google is just a search engine. Not saying just. They're translating the world. But if you think about it, and I really think Google's a powerful brand, but I don't know if at first Google was the right name. It didn't mean anything, really, if you think about it. Like Facebook, it has some meaning and a benefit and promise behind it. But Google, its brand name sort of came after people got used to it being a convention in the marketplace. So you Google someone. Okay. But if Google had just come to market as a search engine, you can't really put the two together, but it became desirable and novelable. Largely because I think, and jump in Sunday, because they were first. And they did a good job with the technology and owning the perception of the consumer.
No, they were the fourth search engine. Yahoo was there, it was an asset.
They were first, but they did it in such a way, right, that was
Their
jumping.
product was good, I mean, gave you the relevancy, but even Apple's iPod was the third MP player.
I know, it's the first at all,
So-
yeah.
So the product worked, really an element of the work.
And sometimes there's a bit of luck, in some ways. Yeah, right?
Couple of things. Google is from the word Googleplex, being a very large number. They were able to search large volumes before anyone else was.
But would the average user know that?
Yes, they ended
Would they
up-
though?
Yeah, because when you use Google, you would find more unique, and that was the other major advantage that they had over everything else. When you search for something, you got one instance of something, not 10,000 instances of the same thing. Like Alta Vista was the big search engine before that, and if I search for something in Alta Vista, I got 10,000 hits, all the same. All right? Page after page of the same thing. Why they didn't have enough brains to compress it? I don't know.
Relevancy was not there.
Yeah, it was.
Last question.
Yes. I love talking about this stuff.
A lot of organizations can and do come up with brilliant strategies, right? And I would suggest a lot of them, if not a majority, actually fail in the execution.
That's a great insight.
What, do you have any perspective to share on how to sort of execute successfully?
Beyond investment, meaning financial, which often the big guys have and I go back to my model about disrupting at the beginning. So the fact that when I built my teams that I gave different titles to everyone, we didn't have agendas, we had itineraries. I made my meetings events, I made it fun. And people bought into we were doing something different to create something new. So on the execution front, everyone was bought into the vision up front of where we were going with the business when I built the strategy, because they were all a part of it. They were all enrolled. And they felt they were going to be making a difference, even though we were just launching a new chocolate bar. If we really broke it down, it was just a new box of bars. But I was creating the backdrop that we were creating a revolution. And some people will say, well, no, we're just launching a toothbrush, or we're just launching. But if you shape it the right way, the execution can be flawless, because you've got buy-in that everyone is thinking on the same page strategically. As soon as I told the CA on my team, and I called him the financial strategist, he immediately thought differently about how he looked at the P&L. He was more creative and strategic about it versus just giving it to me. So my advice would be to recontextualize, and I've got another model for that, but to recontextualize how you move forward as a team in delivering the idea. It's got to be different. You got to be different. That's honestly, I'd jump in, Sonny, but that's kind of. Okay, cool. No, did that help you, sir? You can't win on just a great piece of technology or a great new idea. You have to enroll a bigger thing. If that helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.